All right, everybody, good evening. Welcome. I'm Ann Luther with the League of Women Voters. I'm so pleased to welcome you to this webinar and to thank all the candidates for participating tonight, for their willingness to run and serve and their willingness to put in this 90 minutes to help voters be informed about their candidacy. I will, I think, introduce Chris. Chris Crockett will be our moderator tonight. He is the publisher of MaineStay Media, which includes the Ellsworth American, the Mount Desert Islander, and several other local papers. He's moderated a number of these forums for us, and if you watched last night, you see what a nice job he did. So it's going to go exactly like that again tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris. I'll come back at the end and say goodnight. Take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Ann, and I do hope it goes as well tonight as it did last night. There's a few more people on the ballot for this particular race or races, so hopefully I don't mess up along the way. But hello, everyone, and welcome to night 2 of the Bar Harbor Town Council candidate forums. My name is Chris Crockett. I am the publisher of the Mount Desert Islander, as well as several other weekly newspapers along the coast, and tonight I'll be your moderator. The candidates attending tonight's forum are vying for 3 seats, each a 3-year term. The candidates are Maya Caines, incumbent Erin Cough, Gary Bo Jennings, Cosmo Nims, incumbent Valerie Peacock, Kyle Shank, and Nathan Young. I'll be asking up to 6 questions tonight, depending on time. We've got a lot of candidates here. The candidates were provided with all the questions ahead of tonight's forum. The candidates will be giving 2 minutes to introduce themselves as well as a 2 minutes closing statement at the end of the night. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each of the questions. And with all that said, let me get to the introductions of each candidate. First, we have Maya Caines. Maya has lived in Maine for over 8 years and in Bar Harbor for nearly half that time. You may know her through her advocacy work, her time as Bar Harbor's communication coordinator, or the Jackson Laboratory. She holds a degree in marine biology and policy and a minor in economics from the University of Maine. She has years of experience advocating for marginalized groups across the country. Maya believes the community needs a government that is truly representative of the people and is excited about working to understand the perspectives of all community members and developing informed policy that serves the greater good. Next up, we have Erin Cough. Erin has been on the town council since 2017. She lives in the downtown area and is the executive director of the Bar Harbor Historical Society, as well as co-owner of Fabricate. She is married to Joe Cough, whose family has been on MDI for over 6 generations. While their politics can clash, she said their love of Bar Harbor is steadfast. Erin is a board member of the Acadia Community Theater and Bar Harbor Village Improvement Association. She has worked to update the land use ordinance, generate alternative revenue through parking meters, and supported environmental solutions like updating century-old infrastructure. She understands the complicated issues facing Bar Harbor and works to minimize their unforeseen impacts. Next, we have Gary B. Jennings, better known to many of you as Bo. He will appear on the ballot by his legal name, Gary B. Jennings. He holds a bachelor's degree from Hannibal LaGrange University and completed the Hospitality and Tourism Certification Program at Florida Atlantic University. He currently serves as the Chamber of Commerce Board President and on the Gala Committee for the Criterion Theater. He has previously served on the hype team for the Jessup Library's Capital Campaign and helped raise money for several charities on and off the island. When not working or serving the community, you can find him at Kibo Valley Golf Club, where he is a member. Next, we have Cosmo Nims. Cosmo was born in San Francisco, California, and grew up in Navajo, California. He attended college at the California Institute of Arts, where he studied music composition. Then he moved to Brooklyn, New York, where he worked primarily as a bassist, songwriter, and bartender. Cosmo moved to Maine in 2016 and has lived here year-round since. In that time, he has continued to work as a bartender, composer, and songwriter. Next, we have Valerie Peacock. Valerie came to Bar Harbor to attend College of the Atlantic and stayed. She said because of the community and the ocean. She has worked on boats in seasonal jobs and has traveled. A high school science teacher, Val created an innovative alternative program that led her to the co-founding of Rural Aspirations Project, a nonprofit doing education work across the state. A worker, an observer, a systems thinker, her focus is on the connection between education and community vitality. Serving on the town council has been an opportunity for her to learn how we make decisions about how we want to live together and honor this beautiful place. Next up, we have Kyle Shank. Kyle is the director of analytics at the Hershey Company, where he leads a large team dedicated to supporting and measuring the effectiveness of approximately 1.5 billion in marketing expenditures every year. He is also a visiting faculty member at the College of the Atlantic, where he has focused on applied data science. He has previously worked for Facebook, MDI Biological Lab, Clear Result, and as a bartender at both Side Street Cafe in Bar Harbor and at Hearth and Harbor in Southwest Harbor. Currently the chair of Bar Harbor's Comprehensive Plan Committee, he also previously served on the boards of Island Housing Trust and Kids Corner and is a member of the Alumni Association of COA. And then finally, we have Nathan Young. Nathan was born in Bar Harbor and is the owner of Emery Cottages on the Shore, located on Sandpoint Road. He became its steward in 2018 and continues the tradition of keeping a family-run business. Young served the town of Bar Harbor as police chief for 22 years out of a nearly 30-year career with the town. He said he has a deep understanding of the intricacies of municipal government and the leadership skills necessary to serve the community in a proper capacity going forward. Young said he looks forward to providing voters with the information necessary to make proper decisions in this pivotal election. And with all of that said, I think that's enough from me for a while. Let's hear from the candidates themselves, starting with their opening statement. First up is Maya Caines.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Chris and the League of Women Voters for organizing. For those who don't know me, my name is Maya Caines. I'm running for town council because I believe it's important to have those who are directly impacted by the issues we're trying to solve, guiding the decision-making process, from housing to the environment to infrastructure. I believe it's important to have a government that's truly representative of the people in it, and it's important to have leaders who are able to see these issues through an equity lens. This means having open political processes to those who are seldom included. People who have been impacted by issues like these firsthand know how to speak to the groups that are most affected. I'm just really excited for the opportunity to serve as your town councilor and look forward to building the future that we want together. Thank you.
I almost missed my mute button there for a second. Thank you, Maya. Up next is Erin Cough.
Hi, my name is Erin Cough, and I am running again for town council. This would be my actual third term, and I felt a strong sense of responsibility about where the town is now today, and understanding the issues, especially the issues that are before the town today, can be very complicated. There is very little that's easy about municipal government, especially sitting as a town councilor, and I have that understanding and that knowledge. So I'm also hoping to work through more issues than what we've just been facing. Cruise ships been taking a lot of our time. Other issues have also been taking our time, and I'd like to move on to things that are also important to this town, such as our solid waste management, the ferry terminal on the waterfront and having access to that, and then how we can help create alternative revenue in this town. So I'm looking forward to serving the people, and I'm looking forward to your vote if you re-elect me.
Thank you, Erin. Up next is Gary Bo Jennings.
Known to most of you as Bo. I was raised to approach all things with gratitude. So I want to start by saying thank you to the Mount Desert Islander and the League of Women Voters Downeast, Maine for sponsoring this forum. I also want to thank our moderator, Chris, and for his time and efforts. And lastly, I want to thank the residents of Bar Harbor for allowing me the opportunity to run for town council. I don't take lightly the responsibility of representing all of our residents to ensure Bar Harbor is a welcoming place to live, work, and visit. We are facing an incredible opportunity to meet our current and future challenges head on, and I will do everything I can to help put Bar Harbor in a situation to thrive now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next up, we have Cosmo Nims.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you to the Islander as well as the League of Women Voters for putting this on. I think it's a very constructive and wonderful thing to hear directly from candidates in this type of forum. For those that don't know me, my name is Cosmo Nims, and I moved to Bar Harbor from Portland 4 years ago for what was supposed to be a seasonal gig. But because of the community connections and friendships I discovered and made here, I quickly decided to make this island my chosen home. It's the place where I've lived year-round since, and God willing, it will be for a good long time. I've worked in this town as a bartender, a server, a prep cook, a musician, a wood splitter, remote worker, and I'm running for town council because I believe that the average working resident deserves to be represented at the table. I firmly believe that Bar Harbor can achieve great things and be financially successful while also providing a fair and just environment for those that produce a lot of the labor that makes Bar Harbor the wonderful place that it is. I'm also passionate about climate action and modernizing our communications infrastructure. I look forward to working with community members, business owners, and town staff to nurture an environment that allows all of us to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. Next up is Valerie Peacock.
Hi, I'm Val Peacock. I call myself Val because I only got called Valerie when I was in trouble when I was a kid. So when I hear my full name, I feel like I'm in trouble. My mom's yelling at me, but that's okay. I'll take it. But I do go by Val. And again, thank you for hosting the debate tonight. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, which if you've never been there, when I grew up in the 80s and 90s was a broken down mill town. The downtown was completely empty and gutted and boarded up. And I didn't really know what it meant to grow up in a town like that until I moved here and learned about what small towns were about. So when I moved here to go to COA, or I came here to go to COA, I instantly was attracted to the ocean and the fishing industry here. I wanted to be in and on the water as much as possible. And I started to find a community that I didn't have when I was a kid. And really, that kind of was the start of my journey of understanding how a sense of place and a sense of belonging is really important to who I am as a person and how I want to live my life and who I want to be around in that space. And I loved being able to go to Don's at the time and see people and run into people and always know someone, right? And even now as a town councilor, sometimes I don't want to see so many people that I know in town, but I love that. Even in the busiest of times, I can walk into a restaurant or walk into a shop and see someone I know and wave across the aisles. So I think I've been on the council. This is my first term. I've been the chair for the last term. I'm really interested in thinking about how we make decisions as a community, and facilitating that process from the chair seat is really important to me. I think there's a lot of work that I've started, that I've been part of, that I feel ownership of, seeing it through. And I'd love to continue to be on council and to continue to figure out how to work together as a community.
Thank you, Val. I won't call you Valerie. I don't want you to get in trouble. Next up, we have Kyle Shank.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Shank. I'm coming to you live from my wife's closet, where I'm attempting to hide from my children. So wish me luck for the next hour and a half. I'll start again by echoing others and saying thank you to the League of Women's Voters, thank you to the Islander, our moderators, everyone in town who's watching, both now and future viewers. And I'm also going to take a second to thank everybody who's running, because there's a lot of enthusiasm and just a lot of care and compassion that's going on with the folks who are running this year. So it takes a lot. It's a lot of effort. So I just want to say thank you to everybody else who's running, both those here today and those who joined us yesterday. As for me, I'm going to keep it simple as to why I'm here. I love Bar Harbor. Echoing Val, Cosmo, and others, Maya, I wasn't born here. I moved here. I've been here for a little over 10 years. And Bar Harbor's given me everything I could possibly ask for. It's where my children were born. It's where I've made some of the best friendships in my life. It's where I've learned what it means to serve a community. I've served on a couple of different boards, from Kids Corner to Island Housing Trust, I'm currently the chair of the Comprehensive Planning Committee. And in all of that, what I've learned is the best way I can give back is just using the skills and expertise and unabridged enthusiasm to jump into problems that are thorny and complex to try and help out. And so I'm here today because I think that I can help with that. And I'd love to serve the town in that capacity and really try to build a sustainable, equitable, and manageable version of Bar Harbor itself that we can move into the future. So thank you for your time and looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Kyle. And rounding out our candidates for tonight is Nathan Young. Oh, Nathan, I think you're muted.
How about that?
Perfect.
I'm trapped in here. Thank you very much for hosting this to the Women's League of Voters and the Islander, having a venue to be able to express ourselves, even if I am trapped behind a camera, a little bit out of my element. Here I am. I go by the name Nate. Most people know me that as Nate, and like Val, somebody calls me Nathan. There's a trouble connotation to it. However, we go forward. I'm running for the town council as outlined in my bio. I'm very passionate about the town in which I was born in, the island which I grew up on. We talk about the school. I had to reflect last night in all the school conversation, and I had to recognize I'm dating myself because my first year, in my kindergarten year, I was in the Seal Harbor Elementary School. And then when the high school consolidation took place, I was in the former Mount Desert Island High School, the Mount Desert High School, town of Mount Desert High School, I'm sorry. So, it just gives you a chance to reflect. And during that period of time, this was an island that in your youth, rebellious as I was, couldn't wait to get out of here. And I got to tell you that when I discovered that I did not want to leave MDI, the plane left the tarmac and I was on my way to basic training, and the expletive, what have I done, set in. Anyway, I endeavored to return home here to my home on MDI and have been able to make it my home ever since. Started working for the town in 1985. Wonderful career. I have outlined my departure from the town in a separate article, which I am not going to go into here. I'm not shying away from it. I want to spend my time explaining my primary purpose of it. I do have some concerns about the budget, that it seems to be getting out of control. Over the past 10 budget cycles, our expenditures have gone up about 71%. I'd like to see some more effort put into finding out why. And I believe my 10 years serving on boards, committees, serving and presenting the budget through the process in a logical, accurate, understandable manner in order to be able to provide the voters.
Nate, you're out of time, Nate. Sorry
Then
about
you should call me Nathan.
that. I should have called you Nathan that time. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So thank you, Nate. And let's begin with our first question on affordable housing. We used a random number generator to determine the order in which candidates will answer tonight's question. We'll begin with Gary, then Kyle, Nate, Val, Erin, Maya, and Cosmo. So our first question is, do you believe that the lack of affordable workforce and year-round housing is an issue for the town? If not, why not? If so, what policies would you suggest to spur more affordable housing development? Where would additional housing go?
Well, obviously a great question, because it's a major issue that's found in every other issue Bar Harbor is and will continue to face. And, I don't think it's as simple as one policy. I think it's three major things that need to happen pretty quick. One, obviously we need to pass some more land use ordinance changes to allow higher density, significantly decrease lot size requirements, and allow more property additions across all zones, including in-law suites and above garage apartments. I'd also like to see us work with developers and surrounding communities that have the infrastructure, mainly Ellsworth, to build seasonal employee housing complexes with shuttles. So Bar Harbor owners of seasonal employee housing units can turn those into year-round housing rentals. I'd also like to work to incentivize developers to build starter home subdivisions in and near Bar Harbor. For example, incentive could be no property tax for the first year while they break ground and begin development. That way we can make it so young professionals and those on fixed incomes can afford to live in Bar Harbor.
Thank you, Gary. Next up, we have Kyle.
All right, I'll do my best to try to not be duplicative because I imagine we're all going to have very similar thoughts about affordable housing. So absolutely, it's a problem. Both as the chair of the comprehensive plan and in various other roles I've filled, we've seen this and all of the data, both surveys we've run, surveys the town has run, census data, they all point to sort of one inarguable fact that we have an extreme shortage of both, affordable single family and multifamily dwelling units. And we also have an extreme shortage of rentals, which we often sort of gloss over in the affordable housing discussion, but we really lack both. And there's estimates that sort of vary everywhere about how many we might need. But one of the latest ones we received from the consultancy that's been supporting the comp plan is we're going to need in excess of 600 new dwellings built by 2033, just to account for, organic growth in the town. And so when it comes to policies on the kinds of things we could do to incentivize this, incentivize ways to fix this problem, I should say, is that I think we need a two-pronged approach. So similar to what Bo had brought up about zoning, yes, but Bar Harbor has the same number of zones as Portland, right? There's an innate degree of complexity that's built into it for very valid historical reasons that are an absolute impediment to us trying to implement any kind of strategic plan to actually address housing. So we need to fix that. And I think that there's been a lot of good work on this, right? The 2020 passing of the employee living quarters zoning change was a phenomenal success in that it's got the ball rolling. And many of the things that are on the warrant for this year, double setbacks, floor area ratios, those are great as well. But we need to go further. And I think more importantly, instead of just talking about the zoning issue, is we have to look at the supply side problem. So as Bo mentioned, incentivizing contractors to build. One of the easy things that we could do, easy said, not so easily done, is looking at things like TIF districts in the downtown area. If we want to incentivize putting new units in the highest density areas, which is one of the things we're talking about in the comp plan process, finding ways to incentivize developers to build when it's expensive to do so is going to be really important, and doing so in a way that is not fiscally irresponsible is even more important. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Next up, we have Nate.
I can echo what's being said, like Kyle just mentioned, but one of the things we have to recognize is the county in which we live. We're the third highest valued county in the state of the 16 counties. Second being York and first being Cumberland counties. That's a starting point when we start talking about affordability. When I was growing up on the island, I was told I was not going to be able to afford to live here. It's an age-old problem, and the word affordable housing, affordability keeps cropping up, and we need to try to create a genuine effort towards doing something about it. And it cannot be done without a subsidy. It's as simple as that. The valuation here is so high, and people are not going to sell their home for anything other than what it's worth, market value, and that's what sets the tone. So absent some sort of subsidy, it cannot happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Next up, we have Val.
Yeah, so again, echoing a lot of thoughts that are coming out here. But one of the things thinking about, like, where does housing go? So, participating and leaning into the comp plan process as much as possible. There are some forums coming up in the end of the month, specifically thinking about where are the growth areas of town. And I think it's interesting to think about, do we build in town and create density in town, or do we try to build outside of town in places and lots where there might be more space, but the zoning doesn't match? And then maybe the infrastructure can't support it. And I think, it's the conversation around housing is not just about building houses so people can live, but building them in a really smart way, in a way that is like building neighborhoods and walkability and not just sprawling out too. So, I think we have some decisions to make as a town about where do we want to put this, and then how do we want to support that and design those things out. And I think Nate is right that, it's really not the market is not going to take care of this problem because of the valuation and the cost of building. And so we do as a town have to look into thinking about partnerships or other ways of incentivizing that. And it's interesting to see how the businesses and nonprofits are kind of leaning into this space right now. both building housing for their own needs and thinking about, so kind of setting a tone of a different way of looking at housing. So that's an interesting thing for the town to start thinking about how we can support that, or what other opportunities we have for partnership in that space. But I do think, this is a question for the town right now. Like, I think we all agree that housing is an issue and that we need to do something about it. But in order to do something about it, we have to have a sense, we have to agree that we want to do it and then commit resources to that. And that needs a plan. And that includes where and what types of housing we want to include here, and then building the policy around that to get to that place.
Thank you, Val. Next up, we have Erin.
Thank you. This is actually the town council's #1 priority is housing. And I think it's the thing that has been looked at the most in depth from the comp plan. And I'd like to thank the people currently on this panel for participating in the comp plan, as the rest of the comp plan committee. They're doing an amazing job. The amount of information coming out of that is fantastic. So if anybody hasn't, please look at the videos. Those are recorded. So watch those meetings, and please come out and attend the forums. We'd really like to hear from everybody in town. I think that that's going to be the most informative thing growing this town for the next 10 years. With that in mind, I think it is the idea that Bar Harbor is more than just the downtown village of Bar Harbor. There are other villages like Hulls Cove, Town Hill, Salisbury Cove. There are other places in Bar Harbor that can be grown. It's an issue of infrastructure, which again, we're going back to, we either want to grow those areas and pay for it through bonding, if we're putting in water, sewer, bringing those things down, or we have to look at the environmental impact of doing things like drilling wells and putting in septic, and how close people can live together. So there's definitely a balance between growth and the environmental impacts and the cost. It isn't something that is easy as we need to put a housing development. It actually isn't quite that easy. One of the things, and Kyle touched on this, is the fact that there will be in the next 10 years a need for over 600 units. I found it interesting that right now our short-term rentals is a little over 600 units. If those became year-round rentals, that might really help the problem. And rentals is the important piece I think that Bar Harbor's missing. So.
Thank you, Erin. Next up, we have Maya.
Hi, yes, I would like to echo a lot of what other people said, but I will also just try to focus on some other points as well. I think that affordable housing is not only an issue in the town, I believe that it is the root of most of the problems that we're facing. Safe and affordable housing, I believe, is a right. And until we address the housing crisis on this island, it will be hard to look at the other issues that our town is facing. It's clearly a top priority for so many people and the people on this panel, which I'm really glad to see. Renters, business owners, longtime residents, and seniors that are looking to downsize, but I don't see a lot that the town is actively doing right now to resolve this issue. I think that we live in such a tight-knit community in this beautiful place, and we often ignore the fact that Bar Harbor doesn't just have this temporary displacement problem, but many people in our community find themselves homeless. These are individuals that have been in our community for years. They're students, they work full time, and they're still forced to couch surf, camp, or live in cars because they can't find a place to live. If we want to continue to grow and give individuals the opportunity and to have families here, I think we really need to be proactive. And in order to do this, we need to look at pre-existing construction structures, continuing to restructure the land use ordinance to support the development of housing, and working with organizations and businesses within town and on the island to develop this mutualistic relationship to provide housing solutions that can assist in growing our economy. I don't think housing solutions need to be just a 10-year plan. We have seen time and time again how people buy property and then build giant hotels in 6 months to a year. Why does the town have to wait decades before its citizens' needs are met? I am committing to addressing the housing crisis day one if I'm in office. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. And finally, we have Cosmo.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, but I absolutely believe that a lack of affordable year-round housing is a major issue in Bar Harbor. And I think that it is imperative that our future town council members make it a priority to pursue all options we have available to us to alleviate the housing crisis facing our community. The affordable housing shortage in Bar Harbor, I think, was ultimately an active policy choice. By failing to be proactive in our housing policy, we've allowed a significant percentage of our housing stock to be transitioned to short-term rentals, pushing families who have lived here for generations off the island entirely and preventing people who want to put down roots in this community from being able to do so. We do need to think about financial incentives for landowners that provide year-round housing and to collaborate with towns across MDI to make sure that we have a holistic regional approach to housing that doesn't just push the problem onto our neighbors. I'd especially like to look at our fee structure for short-term rental registrations, especially if we're looking to help encourage the return of year-round rental options to the market. I do live in Town Hill, where a number of new developments have popped up. So we know that additional housing is being built in Bar Harbor, but so many of these units are just completely unaffordable to the average MDI year-round resident, and they're not being built quickly enough to echo what Maya said. And I think it's important that we look to the comprehensive plan to guide us in an open community-wide conversation about where we think additional housing should go and what that looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. And that's it for our first question. Up next for our next question is regarding cruise ships. We'll begin with Maya and then Nate, Kyle, Erin, Cosmo, Gary, and Val. The question is, the appropriate level of cruise ship visitation is a disputed issue. Suggested solutions range from reducing or eliminating cruise ship landings to continuing the current practice. What's the right level of cruise ship tourism for Bar Harbor?
There has been there has been a lot of back and forth about the Citizens Initiative and cruise ship regulation. I was fortunate enough to be thrown right into the middle of it. So thank you very much, everybody. As your counselor, I will work to develop policy that is informed by data and not just a gut feeling and a few conversations that I've had with people in my immediate circle. To me, it's clear that the residents of Bar Harbor overwhelmingly believe that cruise ship tourism has reached a critical mass, both through public opinion polling, which was the survey that went out years ago, and as a result of the November election. To me, the citizens have spoken, and I hope that the town will be able to enforce the land use ordinance that was passed last year, last year. From a big picture perspective, though, I really believe that cruise ships are one of many examples of how tourism has been the focus of the Bar Harbor economy for years. We need to find a healthy balance that allows our community to prosper year-round and tap into multiple ways to find that year-round economy that will support Bar Harbor for generations to come. I believe in looking at visitation in a holistic way, and that will allow our community to make positive change for not just residents, but for everyone that has a deep connection to this island. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Next up is Nate.
Yes, cruise ships, when I first started at the PD, cruise ships, we were picking up passengers with school buses on the pier. So I'm quite familiar with the onset of cruise ships and where we are today. And to ask me to define a number, that number was defined November 2022. And as a counselor, that's the number that I would start with, is what was set by the inhabitants of this town. I would never stick my finger in the eye of 1,780 plus voters and tell them that their vote didn't count. So that's my starting point, is the November election. And any future adjustments to cruise ships and whatnot will still come back to the voters, because they have set the tone and put it in the LUO. So absent any changes from the citizens who have already spoken, and I will say those are voices that were silenced for years that we heard, because I was boots on the ground. And I have to tell you that up until 2022, November that is, I was trying to go on a balanced approach in my mind, saying the town let this happen. But after that happened, no pun intended, but that ship did sail for me. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Up next is Kyle.
Okay, so I'm actually going to answer this more broadly with a little history lesson up front. If you look back over town meeting minutes and things like that, after 47 at the fire, what did we do? We made a concerted effort to pivot our town away from relying on wealthy private residents and towards sort of embracing tourism more broadly, as visitation of the park exploded. come 780s and 90s, what do? We wanted to expand the shoulder seasons. And what was one of the things we did to do that? We encouraged and worked with the cruise ship industry to bring in cruise ships. Where I think we are now, as sort of like a progression of big topics, is we've done an exceptionally good job historically, thanks to town leadership and town residents, at growing the tourism economy. And now people want to have control over it because they feel it is unmanageable. And so I think the discussion on cruise ships is really just a secondary discussion of that. Now, that's not to say I don't think cruise ships are important, right? Clearly, the status quo is not tenable, which is why we voted to pass an ordinance last year, which all of us here, both current council members and those of us who want to be on it, are on the hook to enforce. That is what you do as council when something is passed, right? But I think that the questions around cruise ships really boil down to, do we want to have a managed approach to tourism in general? And I truly think the only way you do that is through building up something like a task force that is supposed to deliver a manageable framework for tourism management, right? Taking all voices into account. Residents who don't own businesses, residents who do, right? Visitation, folks from the park, people who want to do economic development. If we don't build a sense of how we want to manage tourism as a community, then the discussions on the cruise ship are only going to solve one particular facet of what is putting pressure across all aspects of our town, housing included, as was discussed earlier. So I really think that this is just a small symptom of a much wider problem. And I'd rather focus on holistically addressing tourism than just focusing on cruise ships. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Erin.
So to a great degree, I agree with you, Kyle. I think that that cruise ships are a small piece, a small percentage of our overall tourism. And I think tourism in general is something that needs to be looked at and determined whether Bar Harbor wants to live and continue to live in the seasonality that tourism has brought us historically, or whether we want to move on and actually be more of a year-round economy and how that works. For the cruise ship specific question, one thing I'd like to point out as somebody who sits on the current council is I can only talk about this to a certain extent. I don't feel comfortable from an ethics point of view, since we're in litigation, talking too deeply about specific numbers, so I'm not going to. And I'm going to say that straight up. I don't want to work around it. I just want to say that straight up. However, I will fully support what has been approved by the town and what has been voted in. There are impacts to everything that we do on the town council, things that get approved by the citizens and things get done by the council. There are impacts to that. And one of the impacts to putting this particularly in the land use ordinance is enforcement and how that enforcement is going to happen. Generally speaking, when you're talking about the enforcement of a land use article, what happens is when there is a violation, there is no physical stopping of the violation. There is a letter that gets written. It then goes, if it gets taken care of, if there is a remedy, the violation disappears. There is no immediate court. There is no immediate action. So there are ramifications here that weren't fully looked at or fully understood. And I think that's one of the things the council will have to tackle going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Up next is Cosmo.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Kyle and Maya said. For myself, I honestly don't think that we can know at this point what the appropriate level of cruise ship visitation is. It is clearly too much right now, but is there a number above zero that is more digestible? On a personal level, I can say that I do not enjoy the presence of cruise ships, but I do understand why they're here in our community. And I think that we should also recognize that bringing cruise ships to Bar Harbor was a conscious policy choice of the town council over multiple decades. And we're now dealing with the unintended ramifications of those choices. That said, I'm hesitant to comment on what options we can pursue while litigation is still ongoing, like Erin mentioned. And while cruise ships, rightfully or not, seem to dominate the conversation during this election, I think that there are elements of the issue that are more important in wider views than just the cruise ship passengers alone. For instance, what are we doing to lessen the ecological impacts that's generated by us as a town and the millions of visitors that we get each year? How much economy is actually being generated by focusing resources, real estate, and business opportunities to shops that only cater to visitors and don't really support year-round growth? Do we want to focus as a community on primarily generating economic success only during a few months of the year and at the expense of stability and quality of life for year-round residents and business owners? The cruise ships are definitely an important conversation, but it's really what we as a community have chosen to do about cruise ships that point to a large root issue, I think, on the lack of trust and communication between the town council and the wider community about what kind of town we want to be.
Thank you, Cosmo. Up next, Gary.
Anybody to know that I am pro responsible levels of cruise ship disembarkations. The MOU that the town council approved was a step in the right direction. That being said, those that are maybe voted onto the town council, the stance that we have on cruise ships honestly probably doesn't matter. All that really matters is how we will respond if the citizens' initiative is overturned or if it's upheld by the courts. If it's upheld, the council must enact the initiative regardless of your stance. Obviously, we're going to have to be prepared for increased traffic from tour buses when cruise ships inevitably go to neighboring ports. So we'll need a traffic management plan for that. But if the citizens' initiative is overturned, we'll need to work to affirm the previous MOU, possibly with some slight modifications if the majority of the council agrees.
Thank you, Gary. And finally, Val.
Yeah, so I think about this from a bigger picture, about going back to my thoughts about how communities make decisions and how we stick to those and implement those. So in all of the work that I know a lot about cruise ships in Bar Harbor at this point, but in 2008, there was a B&A, Brunel and Ajamal consultants created a cruise ship management plan for the town of Bar Harbor. If you look back in that document, they project out, they make a lot of recommendations about management of the town, and they project out the future market. And they talk about the future of bigger ships and the impacts on the town of Bar Harbor if we don't have a berthing dock. And, we paid for that study. We took the study, we accepted it. We made a cruise ship committee, we made some caps, and then we never looked at the recommendations and the, what really thought about what it was, what was the vision and the goals. Part of that study even recommended having yearly surveys and input sessions from citizens about the level of visitation. Part of that study talked about looking at what happens to land-based tourism and how if land-based tourism increases and cruise ship tourism increases, how do we want to look at that? And so that makes me think about, the town of Bar Harbor doesn't really know what it wants for cruise ship visitation right now. There's a majority of people that want a certain thing, but there's a lot of people that want something else, and it's very divided and split. So, coming back to the thinking about a comp plan and, a cruise ship management plan of right now, whatever it is, whether it's the land use or the MOA, my question is, what is the role of the town council or whose role is it in the town government to maintain a professional approach and plan to cruise ship management that has constant input and reflection from the community, but is also professional and addressing the needs in the way that we need to address them? As you can see over and over again where that hasn't happened. So I think for me, there is quite a lot of work to do in either way, the land use ordinance or the MOA, whatever comes out of this. The MOA is a tool. It is not a cruise ship management plan. It is not a vision for the town of Bar Harbor. It includes, yearly updates and renegotiations that need to be figured out. There's quite a lot of work here to do, and there's quite a lot of work to figure out how we as a town continue to answer this question of what is the right level of visitation for us. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Val. And our next question is on tourism. We will begin with Erin, and then Maya, Val, Cosmo, Nate, Gary, and Kyle. So the question is, what would be your vision for visitation and tourism in the town? How would you propose to strike a balance between controlling vehicle and pedestrian traffic and keeping the town open for visitors?
Thank you. I think this is an excellent question, and one that I've been hoping to talk about for 6 years now. So for me, the larger question of tourism, because it is basically how Bar Harbor was founded. When rusticators came here and people came, they came for the view. They came for the water, they came for the fresh air. That's why they built their summer cottages here. That's why the Wabanaki decided to clam on their shore, sorry. There were so many people who came here just to vacation, and that continues today. That is our #1 economy. That doesn't mean it has to stay that way, but it is our #1 economy. And I think anybody who moved here embraced that when they moved here. They knew it wasn't some quiet, small, quaint fishing village. They knew we had hotels. They knew we had restaurants and shops that catered to tourism. So I don't think there's a huge move that we're going to make that's going to get away from tourism, but I think there is space in this town to have both its historic industry and to have a year-round community. And to have that year-round community, I think, would also make it a more diverse business sector so that we'd actually be able to grow the businesses that are here away from tourism. We already have the Jackson Lab, we already have the Bio Lab, we already have a college and a hospital. We're pretty diverse to begin with. It would be great if we embraced more of that side of our business sectors as well. One of the things for tourism that I would really encourage is more biking, more walking. We can do that through connectors, trail connectors here in town that go out to the park, that go to other towns. We can do that by the cottage streetscape plan, which makes our sidewalks more appealing to pedestrians with benches, trees, and bump outs to slow down traffic and to, in a way, encourage more cars in the summer, or encourage more bicycles and walking in the summertime and less cars. I think that's pretty critical to our overall plan here in Bar Harbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Up next is Maya.
Yes, I want to echo a lot of what Erin said regarding the basis of tourism in Bar Harbor. One of my major priorities as your counselor is ensuring that this town has reliable infrastructure. We see millions of visitors every year, and I think we really need to look at the ways that our town's infrastructure supports visitation, regardless of what that looks like. The comprehensive plan, I'm hoping, will help us determine what tourism in this town looks like, and I really encourage everyone to engage in that process. There are some forums this coming month or this month, so I encourage you to join. I'll put the dates somewhere. We'll get the dates. I'm in full support of moving forward with the streetscape plan, as Erin mentioned. That will really help with vehicle congestion. And I encourage alternative forms of transportation like biking and walking, use of the Island Explorer, which is an amazing resource that we have. The Public Works Department has really done a fantastic job working through many of the structural issues that the town faces. And I really look forward as a counselor to provide support so they can shift their focus into improving the overall usability instead of just managing emergencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Up next is Val.
So I work in education. I work in rural Maine. I drive all over the state. And, I talk about some of the stuff that's happening here in Bar Harbor and other places that are really struggling, where there's not much going on and people are just leaving the communities. And I think about the, Bar Harbor has a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities here that other places don't have. And, I have this big question about, are we as a community, do we operate in service of the economy, or does the economy operate in service of us as a community? And I think, when thinking about tourism is how do we start thinking about not just quantities of people here, but quality of experience, and quality of experience for both tourists and mostly for the people that live here. And how do we leverage, the massive amounts of resources that are here because of tourism to really help us have solid infrastructure, to have a good school, to have affordable housing, to work on our climate plan and sustainability pieces of things. I think there's a lot to talk about in terms of consumption and carbon neutrality. Like, we want to think about, we have a climate action plan, and there's a lot of carbon that's associated with tourism. And I think we have opportunity to be leaders in that space as a community, to be thinking about, what does sustainable tourism really look like? How can tourism really be part of a portfolio of diversity of economy here that helps us really live healthy, vibrant lives and really thrive here in Bar Harbor? And I think that question is something we need to keep asking ourselves and working on. Thanks.
Thank you, Val. Up next, we have Cosmo.
Yeah, so as others have mentioned, Bar Harbor has always been a place for people from away to visit and vacation. That is definitely no secret. I mean, I came here originally for a seasonal gig. And since the pandemic, our visitation numbers have only increased. I think point blank, though, we need to talk about an island-wide approach to tourism management and to take stock of what tools we do have to make sure that Bar Harbor remains an enjoyable place for people to visit and live. We should be asking ourselves, what do we have control over as a municipality? And I think it's how we receive tourists, how we design our downtown landscapes, and how we regulate lodging properties. These are all real possibilities. I'd especially like to explore, like Erin and Maya have mentioned, the possibility of making downtown more pedestrian friendly to alleviate traffic, decrease pollution, improve air quality. And as others have mentioned, thanks to recent state legislation, we can now tap into the $3 million yearly earnings we generate from our parking meters for more infrastructure projects. And there's also a significant amount of federal funding for energy, transportation, and other infrastructure projects we could take advantage of. For example, I'm sure everyone here has experienced being downtown on a busy August day with 5 bars on your phone and not being even able to open a web page, or toast goes down and standing in line for lunch and the restaurant no longer takes credit cards. So what kinds of communication infrastructures can we put into place to handle the burden that summer visitation imposes on our connection speeds? If we rolled out fiber throughout the town and expanded our free public Wi-Fi, we could severely lessen the burden on our cell phone towers, improve internet speeds for homes and businesses, not just in downtown, but throughout Holt's Cove and towards the head of the island, and save money while providing a better visitor experience and improve quality of life for everyone. These are just some of the projects that I would really like to explore when thinking about the future of visitation in Bar Harbor.
Thank you, Cosmo. Up next is Nate.
Yes, I mean, the sustainability, and it was just pointed out, the last 3 years in particular have been we've been heavily visited, people being shut down in COVID. We were inundated when in 21 after things released, and in particular 22. And even last year, I mean, even this year, projections, I think we need to pay attention to overburdening our trails, our park system. I mean, we're here to host our guests who are here to see our beautiful national park, and we can't lose sight of that. So staying in tune with the park's master plan, they're trying to deal with the same issues, and it spills right out into our streets. So we need to be cognizant of what the national park is doing in particular. Expand upon their bus system, the Island Explorer, et cetera. The safety issue on the in-town streets with the bump outs and pedestrian movement, that's very important. It's vital. We can afford to get some more sight distance within our community and within our intersections, especially now that we're charging a premium for people to be able to use the shortage of parking that we created. The narrative shifts, and I'm trying to keep up with it. I really am. I mean, over the years, when you see the philosophy of a $2 ticket is an encouragement to move somebody along because we don't have enough parking, to, hey, we don't have enough parking, but we can make a whole lot of money off of it. So I appreciate the income and I appreciate the revenue source, but I think we need to just take a look at using the money properly. Let's do our streetscape projects. Let's take care of our existing infrastructure before we start talking about ways to find. I know I'm digressing a little bit and going off topic, but let's not target the parking money. I can't target the parking money. I'll put it that way right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Up next, we have Gary.
There's not too much you can do to limit tourism. Like Cosmo referenced, you can do things like you don't have to give every building permit for a new hotel and those type of things. But I don't think anybody wants unlimited tourism. I don't think any businesses want it because there's only so many people that you can service. We're blessed to have a national park on our doorsteps. I personally view it as a blessing and not a burden. Most rural or coastal Maine towns would love to have a kitty in their backyard like we do. So we can't close down the roads or put a gate up at the head of the island to block people from coming. So what we got to do is increase the opportunities for the town to directly profit from the visitation. So increasing non-downtown paid parking and shuttle opportunities. We must continue to encourage growth in non-downtown parts of Bar Harbor, true economic development for the entire island. And again, capitalize on the visitor spend. So they're spending directly with the town as well as the businesses. Beyond parking, which is a huge revenue generator for us, paid shuttles, town-owned or town contracted EV charging stations, as well as other town-owned or town-contracted vendors or vending machines. There's lots of opportunities to increase visitor spending directly with the town, and I'd love to help make that happen.
Thank you, Gary. And finally, Kyle.
I had prepared remarks for this, but I'm going to go off script just to try to amalgamate what everyone just said. So I actually think that none of our visions on tourism should matter. And by that, I mean, modeled a bit on what Val had said previously about sort of the importance of deliberative democracy, right? And people coming together, is that I really think, as I said in the cruise ship answer, that we should have a time-bound task force that sole job should be putting together a holistic tourism management program that the town meeting votes on. And the reason I think that is, again, to what Nate just brought up and to what Bo just sort of backed up, right? We have a wealth of expertise and experience in our town. We have the park, who has a tourism management plan. We have tons of businesses, both directly relying on tourism or have some sort of, incidental reliance on it. We have a wealth of planners. As a member of the Comprehensive Planning Committee, I'm surrounded by planners who somewhat intimidate me with the amount of knowledge they have inside of their heads at any given time. And so we have residents at large who have negative and positive impacts from tourism. These people's voices should be brought together to do exactly what Erin said when she went first in this part of our discussion, is create a holistic tourism management program that is sustainable in that it doesn't drive people crazy, equitable in that it services both business needs and residential needs, and important beyond that, holistic in that it meets all of these needs, right? That is why I say that none of our individual opinions, they may be of interest for you to hear, but I ultimately think that the town meeting, town council manager system, which is one of the most frustrating in the world to operate in, as Erin and Val are deeply aware, I'm sure, is the most effective at building consensus, and consensus on tourism is what we need to actually get out of this problem. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Now we'll move on to our next question, which is on education. And we'll start with Cosmo, and then Erin, Maya, Gary, Nate, Val, and Kyle. So the question is, on the June 13th town ballot, Bar Harbor voters will be asked to approve funding for the construction of a new school. Do you support the school bond? Why or why not? If not, what is the alternative?
Yeah, so on a personal level, I absolutely support the school bond. I firmly believe that every child has the right to access clean, sufficient, and nurturing educational environments. To not provide that would be a massive disservice to the next generation of Bar Harbor residents, and we as a community would be the worse off for it. But ultimately, it is up to the voters of Bar Harbor to determine if the bond measure is a financial burden that they're willing for the town to take on right now. And regardless of if it passes or not, I'm committed to working with the school board, parents, and educators to develop a solution to the situation at Connors Emerson that works for everyone and doesn't place undue burden on property taxpayers. Thanks.
Thank you, Cosmo. Up next is Erin.
Hi, thank you. I think that, yes, I am in support of the school bond. It is a great deal of money, and the cost of construction is outrageous, period. Nothing around that. However, there are ways that we could structure this bond, just like there are different types of mortgages that you could take out that would make the burden on the taxpayer less or more manageable over time. So several options have been proposed to us by our bond agent with the town. Our finance director, who also happens to be our interim town manager, did a wonderful workshop. It is recorded and on the town website if anybody would like to see that. But there were several options that were proposed by the bonding agent that I think it's worth a discussion at town council. And I think those options need to be looked at. One of them, which was actually having two types of bonds, is potentially allowing for donations to happen. The school board has actively been going out and asking people for large donations, and people won't necessarily commit to that until they know whether or not the bond's going to be out there. But it looks like there are some very large commitments to that, which means that the burden wouldn't be on all the taxpayers of Bar Harbor. And one of those bonds could actually be paid off through those donations. The other one would be paid off through property taxes, and it would be smaller than what it is now. So not only do I support it, but I ask the community of Bar Harbor to support the future generation of Bar Harbor's school children and families who want to move here, whose houses we're also trying to build too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Up next is Maya.
Before saying anything, want to acknowledge how challenging this question is for so many people in this community. I personally will be voting for the school bond because I believe that education is one of the most powerful tools that we have. That being said, as your counselor, if this bond were to pass, I will work in collaboration with the school board to support state and federal grants, as well as fundraising efforts to relieve the tax burden on the residents of Bar Harbor. Town councilors need to support the community by being proactive when it comes to managing our infrastructure and take care of the issues as they arise so we don't end up in an extreme financial burden like we are right now. I also really believe that consolidation is something that we cannot ignore. I've had many conversations with community members where they mentioned that Bar Harbor's community was really hesitant in the past about consolidating the high school. I wasn't even alive then, so I don't know, but I believe them. And today we now have the high school in one place, and it really seems like common sense for everybody. I think regardless of the direction that we go, it's really important to note that change is hard and that all the perspectives and fears that individuals are feeling around this must be taken into account and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Up next is Gary.
It's only getting one vote on June 13th. And, you know, we all have opinions. And yes, I do support the school bond. But the question, I'd like to reframe it just a little bit and respond to how I would respond if the bond passes or fails. Because that's really the question we need to be answering is, what are we going to do if this bond passes or fails? Either way, we're going to have to spend quite a bit of money on the building because it is not up to code. There's a lot of issues with it. And even if this bond passes, it's going to be a 4 or 5 year plan to get this thing completely done. So we've got to spend some money now, whether the bond passes or fails. If it does not pass, we have got to get to work right away with the school board to come up with probably a more cost-effective plan, because if this doesn't pass, it's going to be because of the dollar amount. If the bond does pass, just to echo what Maya said and Erin, and I was in there in the school board when they talked to the council a couple of times. And in that meeting, they said they're hard at work already on fundraising. And I know they are. And so the council, the new council will need to work with them if the bond passes to get as much money, federal, state, as well as community funds, because I know this community supports the schools because the schools are important. You're not going to attract young professionals with young families if you don't have a school that works for them. So again, this is a big thing to tackle here. But again, the question we really need to answer is, what are we going to do if the bond passes or fails? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Up next is Nate.
Yes, I would echo the fact that I'm just one vote when it comes to the ballot on this. And as a counselor, you know, that would be to support whatever that decision was made, but ultimately that's a school board decision. I do not believe, you know, it is just one of the infrastructural needs that we're facing at this time, and absent a prioritization schedule on how we're going to deal with our infrastructure and the price tag associated with it, it's gone on. It keeps going on ignored. And the school does definitely need some attention, but the price tag associated with it, and especially with interest rates rising, you know, I don't know about what, you know, financial schemes could come up with. I'm sure that work could be done, but we did a feasibility study on the public safety building 12, 13 years ago, whatever it was now. And council made a wise decision to shelve that plan. It was about $80,000, I believe we spent on the plan at the time, but they shelved it with the onset of getting a prioritization schedule established and give the town a total price tag, because you're talking double-digit increases if this keeps up, and not just this year that we're facing, which is unreasonable. You're talking in the future as well. We need to figure out what the final price tag is going to be that this town is facing. Water, sewer, you name it. We need to know what the price tag is associated with those costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Up next is Val.
Yeah, so this is an issue that's like personal, near dear to my heart. It's my life's work. And I think when I think about what is the most important resource that we have in the town of Bar Harbor, it's our kids. And I think when I think about our kids being in a school that is falling apart and unhealthy and unsafe, that is says a lot about a town and what we value and how we codify things, right? I think the town had opportunities to do some work on this along the way. This isn't a new thing that the school has problems. We kick the can down the road. Coming back to what Nate said, there's no plan for how we do things. We don't stick to things. We don't look at long-term and short-term. We just sort of react in the moments. And here we are in a place where, yeah, it's a steep price tag, but it's work that has to happen. And I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to do it. And I think, in terms of thinking about your one vote as a counselor, you're not just a one vote as a counselor. As a counselor, our job is to look holistically at the whole town and to make recommendations on votes based on whether we think these is the right in the landscape of what's happening, whether this is the right decisions to make. And so, I think for me to say publicly that I support the school, that I support putting the money towards it, that I think the town, yes, it is an increase, but I think we can make it work and we can afford to do that. And that we have to look hard at other parts of the budget, and we have to think about revenue sources, and we have to look at bond structure. Absolutely. But that's our job as counselors, is to look at that holistically and to say, yes, this is a priority and that we need to take care of this, and that it's actually going to cost us more if we don't take care of it now and kick it down the road. And not only that, this is our kids, this is our future. And when you think about, for me, coming back to my opening statement about place-based sense of belonging, having a school in a community is one huge way to do that. So I think that's, for me, a really, really important place to be focusing effort and energy and money.
Thank you, Val. And finally, Kyle.
Thank you. I'll say up front, and for transparency, I have two small children, both of whom are in Connors and Emerson, right? So that will certainly flavor or color anything I may have to say. And a few weeks ago, I wrote a letter to the editor in the Islander that I think sums up the majority of my view on this, but I'll make it simple and just say, as parents, right, we're supposed to model for our children the things we want them to emulate and do. And, I do my best to do that, fail as often as any other parent does. But one thing I really try to do is to model that we're supposed to leave things better than the way we found them. And as everyone here mentioned, Nate, Val, everyone else, about kicking the can down the road, we have to stop kicking it and we have to fix it, right? We have to leave the school better than the way we found it. And I really want to thank the school board folks like Marie Yarborough, Chrissy Lasquadro, and I'm sorry, I'm going to forget a million other names, but everyone who's really put a lot of work into bringing a lot of information to the public for why we should do this. And I'll echo, I will vote to support that bond, but I want to highlight the consolidation question just as quickly as possible, because I think they did a very good job on highlighting why this isn't a but, it's sort of an and, in that all of the consolidation plans we have acknowledge that Connors Emerson has basically the same number of students as Southwest Harbor and Mount Desert combined. All of the consolidation plans that are really on the table, I believe, will still cite a building in Bar Harbor, because we're the population center of the island. And so even if we go down that road, even if it takes years to get there, it will still rely on votes, which may fail, and we'll still have a school that is falling apart. And so rather than continue to kick the can or just vote to do slight couple $1 million to fix it, which is also just throwing money down the drain if we don't believe in the school's longevity, I think you bite the bullet, we do the hard thing because we should, because it's what we should do, as Val said, for our kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And we'll move on to our fifth question, which based on time might be our last one. That's to be determined. But this question is about taxes. And we'll start with you, Kyle, and then Cosmo, Val, Gary, Nate, Maya, and Erin. So the question is, do you favor a local option tax on meals and/or lodging for Bar Harbor? Why or why not? Oh, you're muted, Kyle.
Dang it. I was even saying I wanted to go fast so we get to the ethics question, because I think people really want to know. I'll be succinct. yes, I absolutely agree that we should have a local options tax. And I really think it's incumbent that we find stronger ways to work with the state legislature to get things done that will benefit us. We're one of the biggest economic engines in the state for tax receipts, and we get very little back from them. So rather than sort of dive into this, I'm just going to say yes. I want to thank Lynn Williams, Nicole, everyone else who's really helped getting some of the legislative work done for us, such as the parking meter money being freed up for other infrastructure costs. That's great. And I also want to give this second to thank Jill Goldthwait, who is not running, who was a current counselor, who's really done a fantastic job of keeping everybody up to date on legislative items we should pay attention to, because that's the kind of work we're going to need from council moving forward to get stuff like this done. So these alternative revenue streams will not work if we don't pay very close attention to what's happening in Augusta. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kyle. You're up, Cosmo.
I basically agree with everything that Kyle said. I completely support the local option tax on food and lodging. And I also think that it's imperative and very important that we don't just stop there, but actually do the hard work and look into both federal and state project money work that we can be, might be leaving on the table. And this is money that might not be there in a few years. So I think it's important for us to have an aggressive town council for the next term that will actually try to build those relationships on a federal as well as state level. That's it.
Thank you, Cosmo. Val?
Yeah, so this is an issue that's not in the town of Bar Harbor's hands. We're not allowed to collect local option tax. We need to change state law. And I think the question, I am definitely for looking into that. I think it goes back to my idea about how does the economy work in service of the community versus the other way around. But I do think it's an interesting question to think about why it comes up every year and doesn't get through. And then I think when you look in our own community and look at who's for this and who's against that, that's an interesting question too. And if we come at this, if we're looking at advocacy and lobbying and looking to change things, we need to understand why folks aren't supporting this. And I think a lot of it is in the devil in the details. So it's about what is being taxed, what is the money why are we doing the tax? What is the money being used for, and how is that narrative being thrown around town? So is this about vilifying businesses and making them the bad person and then making them pay? Or is this about us as a community collectively thinking about how we can use the resources and the richness of this community to serve the community, and that we all have a say in how that happens and how it looks, what that program looks like? And so, it's easy to say you want a local options tax. Is another thing to figure out how to get, a continuum of people who are on opposite sides of an issue together at the table to work out what would this need to look like for us all to support this? And then how do we advocate for that at a state level? And I think we're ready to do that. I think we have players who have come to the table. Bo and I had a drink at one night, talked it through a bit, and have started looking at some other programs and how they work. And I don't know if we'll get it in this round, but I think we got to keep trying and keep thinking about not just whether we want it, but what do we have to actually do to make it happen.
Thank you, Val. Gary, you're up next.
My favorite topics to discuss. So in general, I'm a huge fan of local option sales tax because where I moved from in Tennessee, they allow local option sales tax, and the municipalities get to collect and keep all of the funds that they enact with their local option sales tax. My biggest issue with every Maine local option sales tax proposal is that the municipality doesn't get to keep 100% of the funds that they collect. So it's not really a local option sales tax. So I'm not in favor of any local option sales tax where Bar Harbor does not keep all of the funds it collects. I think usually I'm seeing about 30% is what the municipality would get to collect. So again, that's why I'm not in favor of it, and I think many businesses in town feel the same. The bigger, more pressing issue is the lack of proper funding from Augusta. We must work with our Representative Lynn Williams and Senator Nicole Grohosky to have Augusta allocate a proper funding level for Bar Harbor. We should have their backs because they're advocating for us. In 2022, I just looked at the numbers earlier, we are the second highest tax generator in Maine behind Portland. And what does Augusta do for us? They gave us the same funding as VC. And nothing against VC. There's lovely people that live and work there, but that's not okay. Bar Harbor deserves better. And Augusta has to serve Bar Harbor better so that Bar Harbor can better serve the entire state. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Up next, Nate.
Thank you. The Bar Harbor does share well with others when it comes to spreading the wealth, and when what we get in return is always peanuts, considering the sheer volume. That's the system that's set up, and it's going to take the legislature, and we're going to have to keep our foot on the gas with the our legislatures and our representatives and whatnot to make sure they keep the pressure and keep bringing it up. It's the same thing with our county budget. It's the exact same thing. Our money, with this town's valuation is $2 billion, and Mount Desert is 2.5 billion. Just those two towns alone are significant when you're talking about a $16 billion valuation. So that's where we stand. So the good neighbor policy might have to be pulled back just a little bit, and some of these towns might have to step up, start paying for their own services as opposed to having us subsidizing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Up next is Maya.
Thanks, Chris. I do support a local options tax. Bar Harbor provides the state with over $230 million of sales tax, and we only receive about 1% of that. That's what's reinvested into our community from the state. I believe in, I think, two things here. First, advocating to receive more than that 1% contribution. And two, tapping into the opportunity we have from tourism to find alternative revenue streams. Local options tax is just one way that we can do this, but as so many have mentioned, it requires movement at the state level and collaboration with our local representatives, which we can totally do. But I would like to see momentum within the municipality to increase our revenue by looking at fairly distributed parking fees and waste fees, which are really not foreign concepts at all. There's plenty of municipalities around us that do the same thing. And it really just means having larger organizations and businesses and non-residents in Bar Harbor pay for their waste instead of the cost falling directly on the taxpayer. One of my major focuses as counselor would be tapping into those alternative revenue sources, both at a state and federal level, but then also looking at our local revenue and how we can manage that. Thanks.
Thank you, Maya. Up next is Erin.
Thank you. Yes, I believe in a local option tax, and I'm going to echo a lot of what everybody else here said. So I pretty much won't, because Kyle wants to get to the ethics question, which I'm totally good with. But I do, and I'm very discouraged at the fact that we have been trying this for over a decade to get a local options tax. We've come up with lots of different iterations of it, sharing it among even towns that can't charge it themselves. And it is larger lobbyist groups that are basically stopping this from happening here in places that are big economic generators. Like Bo said, Bar Harbor is one of the top economic generators here in the state of Maine. And with that privilege comes the idea that we won't get the grants, we won't get the rural subsidies that have been discussed here because we are such a large economic engine. And our valuation, like Nate said, is over 2 billion in property valuations here in town. That's significant. Those are the things that we need to be looking at. Those are the things when we're talking to the Maine legislature that we need to leverage. So even if it's a small bite with a local option tax, it's still a bite that we can take and bring back to our citizens to help ease that tax burden that we have, the property tax burden that we have here. There's also asking Augusta for more money back from our sales tax. That was something for years we didn't have. It has just started to come back to us in the past couple of years. So I'm very much looking forward to taking much smaller bites of lots of different things to create revenue sources for Bar Harbor to ease that tax burden. And I say we should go for all of them that we can.
Thank you, Erin. And it looks like we'll be able to squeeze in our last question. So our last question of the night, before we move on to closing statements, is about conflicts of interest. We'll begin with you, Val, and then Nate, Cosmo, Gary, Kyle, Erin, and Maya. And the question is, the question of conflicts of interest has arisen in Bar Harbor. Do you think this is a problem in our town? How should town council help address it?
Well, I think if people think it's a problem, then it is a problem. That's the thing about conflict. On conflict of interest is that if there's a perception that people are operating in a conflict of interest, then people don't trust the process and don't trust the outcomes, even if there's not actually a conflict. And so I think it's an issue that gets raised a lot, and we hear it a lot at the council level and in comments and emails, and letters to the editors and blogs, anywhere that anyone can say anything to us about something. You know, since I took over as chair, that was one of my priorities, to start looking at ethics. You know, it's been hard to get it started, but I have gotten it started. We put I think one of the things that I've heard is that, or some of the things that we've heard, are there issues with the actual ordinance itself in terms of the language, the definition of conflict of interest, and then also some clarification around whether there should be distinctions between types of boards and committees. And those are technical details in a very technical document, and that is not conflict of interest or ethics in the town. That is a document. So what ethical behavior is actually is a culture, and that we model and enforce and train and educate people about. So after we get the ordinance sort of looked at to make sure that it's as strong as it can be with what we've learned about the ordinance over the past years, that we'll start looking at training and implementation. And I think, you know, it's time to do it. And I think there's momentum on the council to do that. And we're working on it, is what I would say. So.
Thank you, Val. Up next is Nate.
It's unavoidable that you're going to have in our small town, which I'd like to still refer to it as being a small town. It's unavoidable that we're going to have crossover with people serving on boards and committees and whatnot that are connected in some way. What we need to do is, when we identify the inappropriateness or the apparent inappropriateness of that individual, the 10% and all the things we can come up with in our ethics ordinance as to why, you know, it's not a violation. I call foul on that. If it smacks of an impropriety, and I'm going to use the cruise ship committee as an example. When you have your chair representing a company that's making north of $1 million, I'll just stick with that number. That sours the confidence of the public. And I understand the council gets that, but it's not as simple as trying to define the number of what the income of an individual makes or what they derive for income. And they start, you know, it's a tough situation, but the bottom line is it needs to be revamped, and we need to do everything in our power to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. Step down is what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Cosmo?
Yeah, I don't know if conflicts of interest in Bar Harbor government actually exists at the level that some people perceive. But as Val pointed out, the fact that we're talking about it means that it is an issue on some level. Even if that issue is that the council, as it is not being transparent and active enough to make communication with the public just even like a basic priority. I think we need to address the widespread perception of conflict and mistrust. And I hope that any candidates that are elected to town council, along with current members, will show leadership in tackling the public perception issue through both revising and enforcing the ethics ordinance more effectively, and also working with staff to make sure that volunteer committee members are also held to the same high standard of disclosing potential conflicts of interest throughout their service.
Thank you. Gary, you're up.
Recognize it's a small town, you know, so the pool of volunteers, those that are going to serve, it's pretty small. Second, you know, we need people with experience and expertise and insight. And really what we need to do a better job of is officials must be forthcoming with appearances of conflict, because oftentimes it's not that there's necessarily a conflict of interest, but there's an appearance of one. And so perception is reality. And so just putting everything on the table, put your cards on the table, so your voices can be heard without people wondering what people might be hiding or what they're covering up. So we can't be shy of saying, hey, some people may think this is a conflict. I don't, but here it is. I believe I can be impartial, but I wanted the rest of the council to know so they can discuss or vote on it if they feel necessary. Something that I tell my team all the time, they probably get annoyed with me saying all the time, but transparency and communication doesn't eliminate trust, it enhances it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Kyle, you're up.
Oh, you said the magic words, Bo. Okay, so I'm going to follow that. Like, what is trust built on? Right? Trust is built on transparency and communication, as Bo just said, but it's also built on integrity, right? And so I think if you want to help build trust, which is ultimately what this is all about, right? The appearance, non-appearance of conflict of interest are about trust between institutions and the people who are subject to them and ultimately control them, right? If you focus on integrity first, I cannot stress enough, if you have the time, watch the last council meeting where Val walked through the early results of her work on the ethics ordinance, because there's a fantastic amount of information in there. But what it comes down to, I think, is whatever alterations or revisions that need to happen to the ethics ordinance to bring it up to speed with now, right? It comes back to what I mentioned earlier about modeling, right? You model integrity. So it's just as simple as building the cultural norms on council, on committees, volunteer positions of saying, I might have a conflict. You just say it out loud. I modeled it earlier when I said my children are in the school. Everyone should know I have children in Connors Emerson when I talk about it, because it lets people know that may be a conflict. And you build integrity by culturally making it normative to call out your own conflicts and call out others without it seeming vindictive, right? You just build this cultural norm with one another. But then to write on what Bo just said about transparency and communication, I think one of the reasons that the council gets, in my opinion, somewhat unfairly beat up on this is that the majority of individual interactions with council is the few who make it to meetings and the few who watch them after the fact. And so finding new ways to communicate with the public in structured and unstructured ways, with journalists, with bloggers, no matter the discomfort or comfort with that side of interaction, because not all of us are, we're by definition, we're amateur politicians, right? Building that up, as difficult as it might be, and finding new ways to do coffee with counselors or beers with board members is going to be the kind of thing we have to do while modeling integrity to get that level of community trust built back between, council members and the folks they represent.
Thank you, Kyle. Erin?
So, yeah, I think that when you're talking about ethics, you're talking about trust, and you're talking about the trust that is easily eroded based on rumors, based on gossip, based on people who are just basically trying to get attention. If those rumors and gossip happen, you start doubting each other, you start doubting the people who you have elected to be able to run the government. So I would very much encourage everybody to watch the last council meeting where the council did have a discussion on it. Val brought forward the poll results that were there, and a lot of things that were discussed were more clarification questions. And so I think it is as easy as you said, Kyle, just coming out and saying that you potentially have a conflict of interest. It happens when there isn't that. So you might have some people on a board who say that there is a conflict of interest that they have. Maybe the board decides that they do. It was an interesting situation with this last warrant committee meeting where I disclosed that I had a conflict of interest with the Bar Harbor Historical Society. I stepped aside. Somebody else said that they were my stepson, who's on the warrant committee, said he is my stepson. He's actually only lived in my house for 2 or 3 years, and that was over 10 years ago. He owns his own house. He's married. He has his own thing. But the ethics ordinance says immediate family. The very end of it, it says, or other people living in the same household. That's confusing. So the warrant committee said he had a conflict of interest. I think education on the conflict of interest is truly important. I think making sure everybody understands that things are said the same way and the definition of those words allows us to communicate and have trust when we discuss conflicts of interest, when we have discussions about what does it mean to be immediate family, what does it mean to have special interest. Those are things that I think really need to be clarified.
Thank you, Erin. Maya, you're up.
I will keep it brief because I think a lot of people said similar to what I was thinking, and I agree with you. I support reworking the town's ethics ordinance based on the feedback received from the recent survey that Val did do a wonderful presentation. Please watch. I especially really resonated with developing clear guidelines and questions that boards and committees are able to follow to destigmatize the notion of a conflict of interest. Because Bar Harbor is a small town, obviously conflicts will rise, but it's our responsibility as town officials to address them proactively and follow the ordinance. I think that we should reevaluate the purpose of each board and committee, as many of them serve overlapping purposes. I know that's a hot take, but I feel very strongly about it. And overall, I think that the ethics conversation should really revolve around clarifying language and developing cohesive training and guidelines. And I look forward to being able to work through that clarification to just develop a solid baseline of understanding that we can use moving forward when governing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. And those are all of our questions tonight. We did go over a little bit, but we're going to move on to closing statements, and we'll stick with you, Maya, for your closing statement.
Okay. I want to thank everyone again. Thank you to Chris, the MD Islander, League of Women Voters for coordinating this event, and all the candidates from yesterday and today for participating. All of them participated. It's amazing. And also for everyone who's watching at home. Bar Harbor is constantly evolving, but the way that we govern has stayed stagnant for years. Over a quarter of Bar Harbor is under 30, yet only a handful of individuals in our town government fit into that demographic. The same is true for renters. Over half of our community lives in rentals, yet as our council stands, all of them are homeowners. The current issues at hand need to be solved by the individuals living them. I've actively engaged in Bar Harbor's community and the island's community since the moment I got here, and I'm excited for the opportunity to work towards proactively finding solutions to the issues our town faces through transparency and collaboration. As residents of Bar Harbor, we're so lucky. We have a real choice of who we want to represent our community. On June 13th, I hope that you show up and vote for the Bar Harbor future that you would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Up next is Erin.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and Chris with the Islander for allowing us to have this discussion and allowing us to discuss the issues. I'd also like to thank my fellow candidates for coming tonight. It's awesome that we all decided to be here to actually have this discussion and put our views out there. I love passionate debates and finding common ground. And that's what I try to do in council. I try to find the common ground. I try to find the points where the community can meet. It doesn't always have to be done through votes. There's actually discussion that can happen. And I encourage everyone to come to a town council meeting or committee or board meeting to be there and to discuss things. Bar Harbor is an amazing community, and I hope to continue to usher it forward. And by ushering it forward, I do mean helping to create a year-round economy and therefore a year-round group of people who wants to be part of this community. It is an amazing place to be. I chose to live here. I wasn't born here. I did choose to live here after living in 23 different places around the country. This is what I call home, and this is where I decided to raise my family. And for me, Bar Harbor is worth the efforts, the nights, all of the meetings. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Gary, you're up.
And the League of Women Voters Downeast, Maine for putting on this forum. And thank you, Chris, for moderating. I also want to thank all the candidates for sacrificing their time to run for the town council, both the 2- and 3-year term candidates. I may not agree with all of you, but I do respect you all. Also, just want to give a quick thanks to all the current and previous town councilors. Your service is much appreciated. I know it's a full-time volunteer job that you guys do. And I know that if I'm voted in, I've got big shoes to fill. You know, I tell people all the time that I live in a postcard. It's true. We are blessed to be able to live and work where others can only dream of. This town isn't perfect and we have work to do. And we can't run from our issues. We must face them head on and sustain our today so we can have a tomorrow. Bar Harbor is my home. And the residents of this town have become more than my neighbors. Many of them have become like family to me. I want to serve all residents so that Bar Harbor can remain a welcoming place to live, work, and visit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Up next, we have Cosmo.
Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters. Thank you, Chris. You've been a wonderful moderator both tonight and last night. I did tune in. I'll keep this short since I know we're going over and we're probably losing viewers, but I also wanted to thank the other candidates, everyone that tuned in, everyone that's going to watch this in the future. I'm just really, really excited to get to know everyone, all of our residents. I know a lot of you already, but get to know even more people in leading up to the June 13th election. And you can email me at cosmonims@gmail.com. Find me at Cosmo for Bar Harbor on Instagram. My inbox, my DMs are open. Feel free to message me your concerns, message me your ideas, what you want to see from town councilors, and you'll see me out in town a lot. Just tap on my shoulder and you'll get a minute with me, no problem. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Cosmo. Up next is Val.
I was at the Harbor Committee meeting last night. They're looking at the new plans for the ferry terminal for the launching ramp. That might be phase one part of that, which is really exciting. And we're talking about cruise ship tendering to the ferry terminal. And someone said, we bought the ferry terminal so that we could have cruise ship tendering at the ferry terminal. And then someone else said, no, we didn't. We bought the ferry terminal so we could have a marina. And then the third person said, no, we didn't. We bought it so we can fight over it. That's what we do in Bar Harbor. So we can have the right to fight over it. And it made me laugh, right? Thinking about that's what this is about, right? Like, what is it that we're trying to do? And then what's that process of trying to figure out what the middle space is? It's messy, it's hard. There's a lot of broken parts of this. It's not easy to fix. The council is not one thing. It's, there's 7 people, 7 opinions. We need to hire a town manager. We have an interim right now, where is a lot of work to do. But I feel honored to be part of it. I think it's the most important work to do. And I think one other saying that you hear, there's 2 other sayings you hear around there. No one wants to be Bar Harbor. Like that. We don't want to be Bar Harbor. You see that headline, but actually a lot of people would like to be Bar Harbor. And then the other thing you hear is no one wants to run for town council. But it's pretty exciting to see this room full of people who want to run for town council and to have some space and hear people's thoughts. And I do want to thank Chris and Ann and the League of Women Voters for hosting us and having this space. And, if I'm lucky enough to get reelected, I look forward to working with any one of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Val. Up next, we have Kyle.
So I will also echo all the thank yous, League of Women's Voter, everyone who's put this together. And to echo Val a bit, I also not only don't want to thank the candidates, I want to just let the people of Bar Harbor know that this is like a uniquely well-rounded group of people who are running for your vote. Like, there's a lot that people here agree on, there's a lot they may disagree on, but everybody today and last night truly care enough to volunteer to do this. Some of us tried to volunteer for the first time, several of us volunteering to do this for the third, second, however many times we've run. And that takes a lot. And it's a unique richness we have in the community that there's enough of us who want to do this. And so I think that's really special. And last night and tonight are really like the opening remarks, not the closing remarks. So I'm not gonna focus on my closing statement to try to convince you to vote for me or to vote for anyone else. What I want to do is actually highlight that there is another opportunity to speak with everybody coming next week at the Town Hill Village Improvement Society. So there's an in-person debate, which will take questions from the audience. Maya had mentioned earlier, there's a couple of in-person comprehensive planning committee events coming up that are not the comp plan, not everybody's cup of tea to sit and listen to us yammer. May 23rd and 24th, you can find them on our website. They're going to be fun stuff like at the Atlantic Brewing Company. So there's some morning events there. There's 4 different events over 2 days. You can come and learn more about the plan. Go to town meeting. Don't just vote for counselors. We may think we're important, but the town meeting is what actually makes our town function as a democracy. So please go. It is on June 6th. If I just got the date wrong, I'll be very mad at myself. And please come out on June 13th and vote. Whomever you're going to vote for, it's important to make yourself heard. So thank you all for your time. I may hope your vote is for me, but go and vote for the people that you think best represent you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And finally, Nate.
Now you can see why this is a little challenging for me when I'm pushing buttons and I'm talking from behind a camera, and I apologize for that. I would prefer to deal with people face to face, and I'm going to throw this out there that I will be, and I would be available to anybody that wants to ask questions as follow-ups. It's very important to get clarification as opposed to marching down a road thinking that something was said. Let's just get the clarification. I've heard a lot of great ideas. We are all in this for the right reasons. We love Bar Harbor. There's no question about that. I look out across Eastern Bay every morning, and I can tell you right now, I feel like I do pinch myself because and that's with gratitude. I love this island. I love my home, and I will do whatever it takes to protect it. And I thank you. And thank you for the Islander and Chris. And thank you for the Women's League of Voters for giving us an opportunity through this venue. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. And I will turn it back over to Ann.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you to all the candidates for coming out tonight, providing an excellent opportunity for the voters of Bar Harbor to get to know you and your position that's on these important issues. Thank you for your willingness to run and serve. I know it's a big sacrifice, and I wish you all the best in the election coming up. So thank you again to everyone who tuned in. We had over 50 people on the Zoom at one time, and I think we'll have many, many more watching the recording later. So thank you again to everybody, to the Islander and Chris, and to all the candidates for a wonderful event tonight. Thanks again.